Okay, we're at time, so we'll get going. I hope you're all having a great time. Recordings are available right after the talks if you want to catch up. But for now, I'll hand over to Tom. Tom co-founded Torchbox, the agency that started Wagtail, and Tom started Wagtail 11 years ago now. And Tom is gonna talk today about building a little YouTube inside Wagtail, which sounds really quirky and interesting. Over to you.
Thank you, Thibaut. Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's a bit aggrandizing, really saying a little YouTube because it's obviously it's a tiny thing compared to that, but I thought that would at least catch the attention of the people reviewing their talks. And it is so just a little background. As Thibaut said, I was one of the co-founders at Torchbox starting and in 2000, and I've been really involved in Wagtail right from Wagtail's beginning. And I think, yeah, that involvement with Wagtail was really the sort of highlight of my time at Torchbox for the last 10 years. But I'm not at Torchbox anymore. I'm still sort of around on the edges a bit, but I'm now doing bits and pieces, including writing code, which is fun and something that I hadn't done much in the kind of years up to now. And one of the bits of code that I wrote is a project for a friend called Chloe, who is a Pilates instructor. And I'm going to start by just giving a quick demo of the site, and then I'm going to talk about how I built it and why I feel like Wagtail turned out to be a surprisingly good fit for this. So I guess the nearest analogy to this site is something like Netflix or Amazon, the sort of the TV app. Actually, for those of you in the UK or who are familiar with it who aren't in the UK, iPlayer, BBC iPlayer is probably the closest link because as well as on-demand content, so all like the previous the videos that have been encoded in the past, there's also live. So not quite like live channels, but there's live content as well for people who want to turn up to the live classes. So you're seeing now the view. In fact, everyone can see this. This is public on the internet, but only people who are subscribers can actually watch the videos. And so you'll see to start off with a list of videos with in chronological order that I can search. One nice feature I like is that I've taken a little snapshot link of image from each video. I think about 45 seconds in, I experimented with some different ones. And then as you roll over, it's generated this an animated image which starts from the same second. So it's kind of, you get this nice feeling that as you roll over that you can see Chloe moving around doing her exercises. And so as you can see from the left-hand side, you can filter by various options. There's also this ability to go to featured videos, which is like curated slices of the content. And this is again similar to what you'd be familiar with if you've ever used Netflix, which is or Amazon Prime or iPlayer or something like that, which I'm sure most of you have, where you have these kind of slices of curated content. And so an example is short workouts, if you have less than 20 minutes to do your workout. And for each of these, you can click view all. And in most cases, they're basically like a view for a predefined search. So this one with durations under 20 minutes. You can also favorite videos. So I can click the heart on this one and they become available from my favorites, so which is a quick way of going back to them. As I said before, there's as well as the on-demand videos, there's the ability to watch live. So there are no live sessions right now, but here are two which are scheduled for, if I click this one, for 111 hours time. And as this ticks down to 0 seconds, then it flips immediately into the actual live session. And then once the session has completed, it gets converted behind the scenes into an on-demand video, which you can watch here. There are programs which are kind of curated lists of videos. So here's a session for September, and each one has a day, and you can have rest days in between. All this is managed through Wagtail. And there's a bit more, but I'll stop going through it now because that's kind of the heart of it. And when I started, I was pretty clear at the beginning of this about what the features would be, how the site was going to work, but I wasn't that clear on the technology. And in fact, it wasn't really obvious to me at first that this was going to be a good fit for a Wagtail site. I thought maybe I would build this. I'd probably use Django, but kind of plain Django with models, and maybe using DRF for an API and possibly a next front end. Um, But as I started thinking about how to model the videos themselves and the workflow of Chloe, who's really the main, really the only editor of this site, more and more it felt like Wagtail would be a good fit. And in the end, I think it's worked out really well. There are some edges to it which don't feel like the most natural fit, but I think it's ended up being surprisingly smooth. So I'm going to talk a bit about, I suppose, the main challenge for building a site like this is how you handle video. And at Torchbox, we had, many of our clients would and still do want to handle video. And although it's possible there's a Wagtail plugin for managing it yourself, generally the recommendation is to use something like YouTube or Vimeo or some hosted service, and then to embed them in your site. So you're not having to deal with the kind of potentially multi-gigabyte files and the different ways of streaming and protecting all those files. The tool I used is a platform called Mux, mux.com. And I should say that although I'm going to say lots of nice things about Mux, this is definitely not an advert for Mux, and there are loads of alternatives. So there's one I've used for another project called BitMovin, which is kind of very high end. You can do all of this in AWS and probably a Cloudflare have something similar and so on. Mux though really kind of hit the sweet spot for me in the way that it focused so clearly on developers and a kind of a strapline for Mux could be something like Stripe for video. So Stripe, well known for having the best developer documentation, a really good developer experience, and I think Mux probably tries to be the same. I guess the key feature that Mux provides is something called HLS, HTTP live streaming, which is a pretty old technology. Apple came out with it in 2009, and really the idea of HLS is that you start with a high quality video, so maybe a 4K video that you've captured on your high quality camera, and you send that to some service which converts it into lots of different slices of the same content. And those slices are made up of chunks, but also each chunk has what's called an adaptive bitrate. So it means that as well as the high quality 4K one, you'll have a 1080p one, a 720p one, maybe even a 480 pixel version at increasingly lower bandwidths. And that means that people who are on small devices that can't see 4K or who are on low bandwidth see the lower one first. And it means you get this smooth experience, and it minimizes buffering while maintaining the optimum quality. And FFmpeg can create HLS files for you. In fact, almost certainly Mux and Amazon and all the others are just using FFmpeg behind the scenes. And yeah, I mean they're all sort of just a bit like FFmpeg in the cloud, but there's quite a lot more detail to it that you get from tools like Mux. So this is within the Mux admin, and and you can see it's sort of brutally developer focused. So like I can't even see the a thumbnail of the image here. They don't have titles. They just have these long UUIDs. The reason I can't see the image is because this is a protected video, so that means you need a token to watch it, which is how you handle non-public content. When I look at the asset details, which are things like thumbnails and subtitles and so on, I just really see the API responses to all of it. But that feels it's not very friendly, but it's kind of telling me that this is an API driven service, and it's so. I guess another way of thinking about things like Mux is Mux is not like a replacement for Vimeo. It's like a tool you'd use to build a replacement for Vimeo, which incidentally might be a useful task because I think Vimeo has just been bought by some nasty VCs and it's turning into something else. But I could be wrong about that. Marks also seems pretty reasonable. So here's the billing page, which is showing that in the last month, I think we're storing 4,500 minutes of video, streamed 15,000 minutes, and that currently comes to 9.99. And so it's pretty, you can run what's a pretty significant video-based service on the back of tools like Muxet for relatively little cost. One of the challenges for handling video is what to do with all these massive files, and and because of the sort of traditionally synchronous nature of apps like Wagtail, it can be quite hard. So you don't really want to upload a 2 GB file into Wagtail because it'll use up a thread while it's a Python thread while it's doing it. And you have to think about storage. Maybe it's probably you'd use something like S3, but then you've got to push it out there as well. The way that this works, and this is common with other large file uploads, but the way I'm handling it now, I'll show you briefly. So on the left-hand side here, we see upload video. And when I click this, this is making an API call to Mux, which returns with a URL, and the URL is a URL that I can post large contents to. So just in between clicking that button and loading this page, Mux has replied with the URL, and I can now choose a file, and I'm going to choose one from. This is my cricket team. This is the guy who hit 3 really juicy sixes in a row. If you are not in England or maybe one of the test playing countries, you might not know what I'm talking about. But this is a sport played in my local village. And so this is a relatively small file, 10 megs, but typically this would be 1,000 megs. But what's the upload here is not to Wagtail. That's the important part, I think. It's to, in this case, Mux, but a third-party storage service. And I'm getting updates through my browser, but I'm not tying up the Python backend while I'm doing it. So if I go back now to, before I click on the link here, if I go back to Mux and we see already it's uploaded to say there's a new asset. We can identify this one pretty easily because it's so short. It's only 8 minutes and 8 seconds instead of 35. So that's now been uploaded to Mux. And then Mux will ping my Wagtail site. So on every activity, Mux will generate a webhook, and Wagtail in this case is listening to for webhooks. And when it hears that there's a new item asset in Mux terminology available, then it will sync and update it here. So now I click here and I'm seeing the latest ones. I get the thumbnail generated automatically, a title which has been generated basically from the quality and the time it's been updated. And if I click on this now we'll see that this is taken to my Wagtail page. And this is where I started really feeling the benefits of Wagtail, that although I could have modeled this in Django, already I'm getting, for example, immediate real-time preview. So I can click and watch this now. And even from this preview, I could be playing it on my big screen and I could see the captions, which are on Tilly in this case, and so on. Um, but I'm also getting workflow, the ability to save different records, to attach taxonomies, which are managed through snippets. I get immediately a slug, which is going to be better than this once I rename it. I can make it free or not. So all of these things that I inherit from Wagtail just make my life so much easier as a developer, and also importantly make them so much easier for, in this case, Chloe, the person who's managing this content, who's not especially technical and has never used Wagtail before. So yeah, that video upload part was something that I took me kind of a little while to work out in my head how I was going to make that happen. It does mean that you have 2 records of everything now. So there's the record on Mux and the record in my videos in my Wagtail pages. Those are held together by keeping a record, a reference to the Mux asset ID here, whether or not it's public, and that means that I can do things like so when I'm serving up the page in Wagtail and it's looking up the asset ID and the playback ID and then serving it directly from Mux, it also means I can use that to track things like, so now, for example, I don't really, that video is not going to be relevant for Chloe, so I'm going to delete it. And I also want to remove it from Mux. So I built in this little Mux asset manager, which is checking the Mux API and seeing if there are any videos I've got locally which are not being used. And here we can see that while all of these ones are in use, that one I just created has been orphaned. I've just got to resize my screen to see that. So that was one of the challenges about of keeping these two records in different places, but in the end, relatively straightforward to solve. And I feel like, yeah, the advantages of not having to handle all these assets really outweigh the minor disadvantages of needing to track these items in two different places. I'll also going to show live videos because these this works in a quite a different way. So with a live video, this means this is I think maybe easier to explain it by showing it. So if I was going to create a live video now, it could either be like right now or I can schedule it for sometime in the future. So let's make one called Wagtail Space. And in this case, I'm going to do it for immediately the future. So it's in the UK here, it's 4:45. So I'm saying it's at 5 p.m. And the action of saving that will generate what's called uh, RTMP URL and stream key. So RTMP is like a transport, a bit like HTTP, but for video usually. And it's become quite standard. The tool that probably is best known for streaming content like this is called OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, and it's gained a lot of popularity in the last few years because it's heavily used by streamers like game streamers or and so on. And it's but it can be used for any sort of video input, like your screen or your camera, your phone, and you can have like fancy bits of hardware or software that combine all these, and then you send them off to some stream. And that stream could be like YouTube for YouTube Live, or it could be Mux, which can also handle live content. So OBS is the software that you'd use, and software that in this case Chloe uses, and she just needs to plug in this stream key, and then once she starts doing that, then it will appear live on the live site. And I'm going to delete it quickly because I don't want any of her users to accidentally come across a an empty Wagtail Space live program when they want to watch Pilates classes. That so this was a live videos are first off, I thought maybe that it could be like a sort of a different type of video page. And then I realized that it's not really a good fit because live videos are more like they're more for sort of holding state than for managing content. But what happens after a live video has happened is that they then get converted. So you can see here this converted point in the background. Mux will turning it from a live stream into the HLS format that I was talking before. I get a webhook about that, and then I from the converted page, from the converted stream, it will I can't remember where it shows me here. It will create a Wagtail page from that. So in fact, increasingly, the on-demand content here is conversions from the live from previous live sessions. Okay, I'm going to move on from showing you the back end and talk a little bit about the API. So the next thing was my decision to use an API. So although in the begin, as I said early on, I decided not to make a JavaScript front end. And in fact, I've been happy with that decision. So the front end is pretty straightforward. Django templates. There's a little bit of JavaScript for things like liking and some modals, but really not very much. And I feel like because I've really tried to optimize for speed, and these pages are pretty lightweight, that I think the advantage we get from the extra immediacy perhaps of a JavaScript app just weren't worth it. And yeah, I've definitely been happy with that decision, and the fact that I get URLs and history and all this sort of thing that you get for free, and also just the speed of working with standard Django templates has definitely made that decision feel right for me and for my sets of skills. But I wanted to have an API too, because I was interested in some other types of client for this content. And I guess normally in the past I would have used Django REST framework, or indeed Wagtail's built-in API. But because not all of the content here is handled as Wagtail pages, then it felt like the Wagtail built-in API wasn't going to be quite right. And I was also keen to work with Django Ninja. And one of the reasons was because of the great new page on the Wagtail documentation that I think maybe Thibaut wrote, which really makes it straightforward for understanding how this all fits together. And on the whole, it feels like Django Ninja is it's sort of easier to reason with, at least for me, than with DRF. One of the things I really like about Django Ninja is that you get a built-in spec for your API. So this is if I go to slash API slash v1 slash docs, then I'm getting the full spec for the API. So as you can see here, it's mainly about retrieving details or listings for programs, analytics, live videos, and so on. And also the OpenAPI JSON file, which doesn't look very fun here, but is great for computers to read. So I have found that I've been able to build a mobile app based on that spec and using AI tooling. And I'm going to try. I haven't done this before, but I'm just going to try sharing now my phone. So I'm going to go to advanced iPhone by cable, and I hope that at least in a second I don't actually see any notification of this. Oh yeah, I can see it on my screen. I'm hoping that you are seeing my phone. And when I click on now, this white circle unstyled one is a mobile app. So this is a native iPhone app. I built it using React Native on top of the Expo platform. It's not terribly fancy, but it does all the kind of things that you would expect, like browsing videos, being able to, of course, watch them. The live video features, the ability to handle programs, um, nice sort of back and forwards, iterations, favorites, and so on. So no really extra features from what's in the website, but a nice UI and probably a good platform. I'm hoping a good platform for future development, particularly perhaps around. No, a nice feature I think would be offline videos. So if you're going on holiday, you don't know if you're going to have good Wi-Fi where you're going, and you want to do your Pilates workouts. It'd be nice to select some videos for download, and that's the kind of thing that's hard, pretty, I would say, impossible to do on a browser site on it, but certainly possible with a mobile app. I was next going to talk about deployment, and I am going to just talk very briefly, but I see that I'm sort of running out of time, so I'm probably going to skip on quite quickly to the final part of my section. I use fly.io for deploying. I really like fly.io. Um, it's kind of Docker based, works really portably. There's great visibility over um, everything that's happening. And particularly, this is perhaps what I like most about it, and what's been most used to me is the built-in Grafana for log management. And just a little aside, when I launched it, I was really happy with the performance of the site. It's really fast, and then just gradually over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it was getting slower and slower. And I actually been spent quite a lot of time thinking about, okay, I've obviously underestimated this. I need to add in caching. I need Redis. I need two machines at the front to handle the load. Um, and then I mean, I should have done this right at the beginning, but right near the end, I started looking at the logs, and I was being hammered. The site was being hammered by AI crawlers. So Claude, OpenAI, the Google bot, and it's up, I think at one point it was 200 requests per second, and they were all like just misbehaving, looking at the different search facets, cycling around, and that's why the site was crazy. And so I wish I'd realized this sooner, because it would have helped me do what I did quickly, which was just block all the bots, and immediately the site went back to normal. Um, here are the logs, and it's really interesting seeing things like the webhook payloads, which are what I was talking about before, the way that it gets communicated with from MUX. I know I'm running out of time now, so for the last section of this, I'm going to talk about the AI tooling. So there isn't really any AI in this app, but I used AI a lot or particularly large language models, to help me build it. And I guess the standout point of it is that I didn't write a line of code for this app. Of course, I read a lot of code and I made a lot of decisions about code, but all of it was written through prompts and reviews. And that's a really feels like such a dramatic change, and so strange to be kind of saying that, when 2 years ago that would have seemed crazy, and even now it seems sort of impossible. Um, It certainly accelerated the way I work. There are some standard ways that probably lots of you are familiar with using tools like Cursor and there's another editor called Kiro that I like and Claude Code. But a couple of the less common ones that I want to talk about briefly are so this is an approach which I haven't seen much elsewhere, which really takes advantage of the massive context windows of Gemini 2.5 Pro in particular. I use just file. So just is like a kind of modern alternative to make. And I've got a just gendocs command, which uses this tool, faster prompt. It's one of Simon Willison's little command line tools. And it ignores a lot of files like migrations and logs and so on, and but takes everything else and converts it all to a single text file, which is in a sort of XML format. And then that file is currently 1.3 megs big on my, and I upload that to Google, to AI Studio, which is weirdly still free. And because of its massive context window, it means that AI Studio can see the entire code base. And I don't ask AI Studio to write code for me, but I do ask it in this scenarios like that to give me sort of top level advice. So it's like a sort of bird's eye view, taking into account the whole code base. So here's an example of when I wanted to start working on the mobile app, past the whole code base. I talked about what I want in the app, and here's an example of the output about what's possible and a well-reasoned um, starting point that would help me then split that up into features and break it off into other LLMs for other tasks. And finally, I'm going to show another technique I've used, which again is not, there's nothing kind of new or special about this, but it was interesting to me because I find that when I'm working on stuff like this, my head is buzzing with ideas about it quite a lot of the time, and not always when I'm sitting at my computer working. And I really like the ability um, to trigger pull requests to AI from other places. And in fact, this one, I know this is too much information, but this one, I'm pretty sure I did this one in the bath. So I realized there wasn't a way for non-members to easily sign up. So using the GitHub app, the mobile app, I typed this message in and put it in the link it should be, and I signed it to Copilot. And Copilot comes up with a work in progress pull request. And nicely, it even prints out a screenshot. Didn't get the styling right. Didn't manage to collect static, I guess. But came with it, and this is a minimal change that I was happy to merge. But I thought that was yeah. This was still, of course, learning about the different ways to make the most of these tools. But I guess yeah, the sort of headline point with this one is that I was able to build the whole thing without writing any code. So I guess, and the last thing I'd say before I wrap up, because I know I'm over time and I can see Thibaut smiling at me and probably I've run out of time for questions, is that I think Wagtail is a good fit for handling sites with a lot of video and or other large formats. And um, yes, that's it. I think it's good for video. I'm happy with the choices I made. Thank you, Wagtail.
No, thank you, Tom. This is excellent. We're a bit over time, but we do have like time for rapid fire questions. Real fast, when you said subscribers earlier, is there a paywall in here or is it just user signups?
There's no paywall. It's yeah, I mean anyone can go to that site and look at it, but currently you need to be a subscriber to watch the actual videos. There's a 1 month free trial, I think.
Great, excellent. More rapid fire. Ralph also asks the media player. Do you use a specific one for the media player?
I think I used them. So Mux them have their own player, but they actually a lot of the people who work at Mux now were on this project Video.js, which is one of the standard browser players. So it's very closely related to that.
Okay, 30 seconds more questions. Lots of good feedback in the chat. Ollie asks for clarification. Writing the whole thing without writing any code, that's just a native app, right? How much is the Wagtail
The
sites?
whole thing, the whole thing,
The
all
whole
the
thing.
code, all the Wagtail site, all the front end, all the back end, all the mobile app.
Okay. If you want to say more about that, I think people will find very interesting. But I also reflected on the hits you were getting from AI crawlers. Do you want to say any more about how much traffic you're
Yeah, I
getting
mean that
from
was
AI?
really shocking to me, and it made me think, how other people around must be dealing with this problem. And it was only, it took me a few days to work out that I should be looking at the logs, but most people who are having this problem are not going to be looking at the logs and seeing this, the actual the cost that's been generated because all these companies are, being funded by the VCs, and they're all desperate to suck up as much of the internet as possible. And I think they're doing it in sort of ill-disciplined ways. And of course, the other bots like Googlebot and so on have learned how to behave generally over the years. But this is Wild West at the moment, and I think, yeah, it was shocking to me, and something probably that people need to be aware of.
Excellent. We're right at time. I'll stop there. Thank you again, Tom. I think people love the
Thanks,
discussion.
everyone. Thank you, Thibaut. Bye bye.